Hey, good morning. Robert Phoenix here, and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. I am coming at you live on the 25th of April. April is almost over. Let me just increase the volume here. How about this? There we go. Bring up the levels. Got a lot of really good feedback yesterday from the audio, and I'll tell you the difference between now or yesterday and the previous shows is that I've been using a desktop app, and yesterday I went into the Spreaker online app, which apparently seems to be a bit more robust in terms of punching the volume. So, I'm just going to go with this. You don't get the cute and funny little sound effects. If I bring some sound effects in, I'm going to, well, if I want them, I have to bring them in. Anyway, welcome to today's show. And we're going to get into what's happening in the White House today. And again, it could all just be grand theater, the spectacle of illusion, the raising of our collective anxiety, which is, I think, clearly on the table for a number of people. But at the same time, I think we also have to realize that there are certain things going on that we got to pay attention to, and they're not pleasant things to pay attention to. So let's get into this. This is from yesterday, and apparently Trump ordered the entire U.S. Senate to go to the White House for a North Korea briefing. So this is from Reuters. I'm going to read this to you. Top Trump administration officials will hold a rare briefing on Wednesday at the White House for the entire U.S. Senate on the situation in North Korea. All 100 senators have been asked to the White House for the briefing by Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats, and General Joseph Dunford, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said White House spokesman Sean Spicer on Monday. The White House, while administration officials routinely travel to Capitol Hill to address members of Congress on foreign policy matters, it is unusual for the entire Senate to go to the White House and for all four of those officials to be involved. Wednesday's briefing was originally scheduled for a secure room at the Capitol, but President Donald Trump suggested a shift to the White House, congressional aides said. Washington has expressed mounting concern over North Korea's nuclear missile tests. That's a straw man. And its threats to attack the United States and its Asian allies. Now, who are the Asian allies? Japan, South Korea? Is China an Asian ally now? Because sure as hell wasn't before. Trump, who called leaders of China and Japan during the weekend, told UN Security Council ambassadors on Monday that the status quo is not acceptable and said the council must be ready to impose new sanctions. Okay, this is really fascinating because what we're seeing is this deconstruction of one version of Donald Trump and the reconstruction of a new version of Donald Trump. And the new version of Donald Trump is he's been recast as a globalist. I mean, this is kind of amazing how quickly that this transference has occurred. And I talked about this on the Sunday night show, and I might have talked about it yesterday a little bit. And it has to do with Trump and his astrological setup. And his astrological setup is, as most of you know, and as I've talked about before, this very intense confluence of energies in the sign of Gemini, which we have Uranus, the planet that brings chaos, change, all kinds of interesting elements into our lives. In many cases, seemingly out of the blue, which is part and parcel of Uranus and Aquarius. It's the lightning bolt, the thunderbolt of change. And that planet is conjoined with Trump's sun in Gemini. Now, I know people that have Sun-Uranus conjunctions in their charts. And it's an unusual conjunction, and it creates at times a bit of instability because there are always outside factors that can affect the individual in ways that the individual cannot necessarily or often predict. That's one component of it. But when we get into the sign of Gemini, now we're getting into a level of complexity that's kind of off the charts. And we throw in the true node, which is where he's supposed to go in this lifetime, his purpose, his true north, his point of evolution, and all the Gemini stuff that goes along with it, and Uranus and the sun. And, Gemini has been cast as having more than one self or more than one persona. That's the nature of it, right? It's split, it's dual. You get into Uranus and the sun and the true node, you've got about 6 people. And I think, and this is what people are really struggling with, is that the guy who ran for president was not insincere. I mean, the guy who spoke to the American people on the day of his inauguration with that speech, which was an incredible speech. I mean, it was unlike any other speech we had been given. And of course, the fingerprints of that speech, are all about Steve Bannon. His fingerprints are all over that speech. And what's happened is that version of Donald Trump has been influenced or taken out, or we don't know the specific mechanics around all of this. But I believe that due to the fact that he has these, what I would call partition selves, that when he was talking on Inauguration Day, when he was addressing the American people in places like Ohio and Pittsburgh and Indiana, people craving to be heard, people craving to have somebody in front of them articulate their anxieties, their frustrations, their anger, their resentments, their fears, their hopes, dreams, desires, all of it. And he was able to do it because there is a part of him that is in touch with that. Unless you've got multiple versions of that self and you run that version out for certain speeches and another version out for bombings, which could be the case. I mean, we saw multiples of Bush. There was the aggressive Bush and the docile Bush. We've seen variations of Hillary. So this is not necessarily an improbability. But from an astrological perspective, I am telling you that there is a partitioning of self inside of Trump. So when he says, or when he said those things that were essentially really striking a chord in Middle America, you can't fake that stuff. You really can't. Even though people are clamoring for it, you can't fake it. There is an emotional pitch and frequency that must be hit. That must be hit. So what we're seeing now is another version, I believe, of the partition self. Now, again, people have asked me, is there a sociopathological aspect to astrology? And I talked a little bit about that, and I apologize if I stepped on some people's toes who had, not so happy aspects to Neptune. Of course, the interpretation of astrology can be far and wide and vast and deep, and you can get into nuance, of course. And this is one of the challenges that astrologers have is, you just can't read off of a script and say, well, this is this and this is that. But I've got 30 minutes, so I've got to be able to articulate things in ways that people can understand them. And with Trump, he's got the Mercury-Neptune square in his chart, which makes it, for him, at times, difficult to, how shall we say, no, not difficult. Let me rephrase that. It makes it easier for him to be swayed, easier for him to move his thought stream from one position to another and convince himself in the process that it's right. I think Trump, again, I'm not giving him a pass. I think he was traumatized. I think Trump might be some kind of MK Ultra project. And, why is Jared Kushner successful with him? Maybe Kushner's got the codes. I don't know. But clearly this is a different person. And now he's wanting to bring the UN in. How long ago was it when Trump said the UN was useless? And he didn't want to pay for the UN. Now he's saying the UN's got to get tougher. The UN has to impose sanctions. Now, this could all be another 5D chess move, and maybe he's exposing the UN as a result of this and how feeble they are and how ineffectual they are. I mean, that could be quite possible. But meanwhile, his daughter, Ivanka Trump, is hanging out with Angela Merkel on a conference for women over in Germany, sitting right next to her. She was Angie's wing girl. And what is up with Merkel in that creepy Illuminati little hand gesture she does at every freaking photo opportunity? What is up with that? It's like she's receiving transmissions from Baal. It's just bizarre. And she's like frumpy. I'm sorry. Call me misogynist. I'm not a fan. She's frumpy. She's got her little, what she looks like a little bit? I'm going to be, again, I'm sorry. She looks like those little Wishnik dolls, those little troll dolls that that were popular like back in the 60s. She's like a version of that with maybe a slightly better haircut. And then she's got her little, her little Illuminati hand gesture in between her crotch and her navel. Would it kill her to not do that one of these times? Like, oh, she stopped doing that. Maybe we should talk about that. Anyway, so Trump is now sort of gathering momentum and gathering forces so that he can theoretically jump into North Korea. Now, I was thinking about this. Here's what I think they're trying to do. Okay. Number one, I think they're trying to get China involved and, kind of spread the level of accountability. Like North Korea is the bad child and China is the stern father who's not very emotional. And America is the histrionic mother that comes running over to China, hands in the air. Oh my God, you've got to do something about this. You've got to do something about this. Honey, you need to talk to him. It's kind of the role we're playing. But I think also what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to get North Korea to do something. And not just launch one of their missile tests, which I'm not really that impressed with, to be quite honest with you. I'm not impressed. And I've heard that they could launch 5 or 6 missiles simultaneously, all to the West Coast, and one of those missiles would get through the missile defense shield. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I'm not a military expert. I don't know what our missiles are capable of. I don't know what our low orbital satellites with particle beam weapons are capable of, because they sure as hell have them. Like that demonstration of the Moab bomb in Afghanistan was so primitive. They've got stuff that would make the hair on your toes curl. We don't see it though. What we see is the paraded out Mayday version of the military-industrial complex. The black budget has existed for decades. And what do you think they've been doing with that black budget money? They've been developing systems, technology, and weapons that are far more advanced than what's currently on the table. And they could use them at any given time throughout any given kind of conflagration. And I believe that they have at certain points of time. I think they whipped out a few of those things in Iraq. So let's just kind of take the theatrical part away for just a second. And I think that what Trump is trying to do is to get North Korea to flinch and to do something and to give the U.S. an excuse and some kind of provocation. Now, they can't do the same thing with North Korea that they've done with Syria, which is implant ISIS, ISIL, ICE, Daesh, whomever, who could go in and basically, gin things up and create destruction and distraction, and then go in and say, hey, look what happened. Look at these babies, the innocent babies. It's always the babies. And yet they're more than willing to sacrifice the babies any given day with Planned Parenthood. They're willing to sacrifice small children at the altar of pedophilia. It is the ultimate statement of hypocrisy to sit there and say that we have the interest of babies. What about the babies in Yemen? What about those babies? Don't they count? I mean, look, we could go on and on and on. But this baby stuff has got to end. And the American people have got to wake up. They've got to wake up, and they've got to wake up fast because they're being played. Now, I was talking yesterday about what happened in Berkeley, which was really fascinating. Watching the right, come out. I mean, I've watched a lot of videos of that event, and so here you have, and who knows who's on both sides, right? Because just from COINTELPRO, that these events and these so-called sides are infiltrated. And they've got people that are posing as Antifa. They've got people kind of infiltrated on the alt-right side. And they're there to gather information. And they're there to instigate. So, again, let's not fool ourselves. And Antifa, by the way, is a cultivated group. It has its roots in Europe, has its roots in Sweden, where they've actually been mainstream. They got a lot of money. They got a lot of money from Soros. They employ college professors. That's part of their tactic. This is not some kind of spontaneous grassroots movement. Now, on the alt-right side, there may be some of that, but I guarantee you it won't be that for long. That they'll have their own kinds of feeders, let's put it that way, into the group. Anyway, so I'm watching this, and there's this kind of standoff happening, right? Standoff. A lot of poking at sticks. There's this one guy who got his head cracked open by a guy wielding a chain with a bicycle lock on it. It's a very interesting kind of moment in time here. I mean, this battle in Berkeley is fascinating for a number of different reasons. Not just the schism between the right and the left, but also the strange kind of psychological half Nelson that got put on America in that little skirmish, and I'll talk about that as well. But let's talk about this event where this guy who is in the middle of a group, and you can find the YouTube videos, they're all over the place. He's in the middle of the group. He's kind of in the middle of this standoff. And all of a sudden, this chain with a bicycle lock comes over from the Antifa side and cracks his head open. And he's bleeding, and they've got to call an ambulance. I mean, it's kind of a nasty, nasty moment in time. And the guy that does it did it from behind a woman, and then he kind of ran away, ran back into the crowd. Well, apparently there is a group on 4chan called POL, P-O-L, and they're a group of young people. I don't know how, I mean, I'm assuming they're young because, obviously people on 4chan are young. That's tongue-in-cheek, but I'm assuming they are. And they have this incredible ability to find people, to figure out who people are. They use all kinds of biometrics, they use all kinds of data points, and apparently they've got this running feud with Shia LaBeouf, and they're able to track him wherever he is in the world, and they've done it. It's very weird, okay? Very strange stuff. Anyway, they use their same technology to figure out who this guy was. And apparently his name is, and I can say it, based on what they found, his name is Eric Clanton. And he's a professor at San Francisco State University. He has a course in political ethics or something like that that he teaches. They found his Plenty of Fish dating page where he says, what he does in the spare time. He thinks about revolution a lot. It's fascinating. I mean, they found this character for all intents and purposes. And he was actually, I'm not sure if he was arrested, but he was brought in for questioning by the SFPD. How about that? So this is a fascinating development in and of itself. And when did we have these tools to actually find people, to figure out who they are? I mean, this is like the tools of Big Brother that have been unleashed, really, unto the citizenry. And this is what was happening with Pizzagate and Pedogate. And to some extent, this speaks to the power of the internet. And I know the internet gets a bad rap. We get sucked into the internet. But this is where the internet really serves a purpose. Now, does it automatically become an extension of Big Brother? And are we little brother after that? I mean, that's a question that we're going to have to grapple with. But at the very least, it is a tool that can equalize the playing field at certain points in time. Now, it could also be used to assassinate one's character, and there could be, look, but this happens anyway. In the mainstream media, it happens. Look what happened with Richard Jewell after the Atlanta Olympics. This guy was a hero because he actually stopped something from happening. He saw what was going on in the Olympic Village. And by the way, I was a mere, 2,000 feet away from that event and about 20 minutes away. Like, I was about 2,000 feet away 20 minutes before it happened. I had nothing to do with it, obviously. I got back to a restaurant in downtown Atlanta, and I was watching the Olympics, and then the news came out. And Richard Jewell actually saved people's lives. He was a real hero. And then they needed somebody to pin this on because they had an agenda that had to do with white terror during that time. That was when they had the anti-terror bill ready to go. The anti-terror bill was the French kissing cousin of the Patriot Act. Everything was getting ramped up prior to the Patriot Act. You had you had Ruby Ridge, you had Waco, you had the Oklahoma City bombing, and they were trying to use the Olympic bombing as the next platform for that. And something happened, but it didn't happen the way it was supposed to happen. And Richard Jewell got in the way of it. And what did the mainstream media do? They assassinated his character, and they along with the FBI, turned Richard Jewell into the number one suspect. And it ruined his life. And it was an event where this guy could have had his real moment in the sun. He was a nobody. And was he perfect? No, he wasn't perfect. He was probably, if you ever hang around people that have security guard outfits on, sometimes they can be really unbearable because of a little sniff of power. And I think Jewell might have, kind of been in that, in that camp. And it made him vulnerable. It totally made him vulnerable. So it's going to happen anyway in the mainstream media. So it could happen there, it could happen on the internet, and this is the nature of human existence when there are agendas at play. Anyway, that was an interesting event as it related to Berkeley. The other interesting event was this woman named Moldy Locks who gets punched in the forehead. And this has been played over. It's made her an internet star. Like, she has displaced the Meet Me Outside girl. That's the latest internet star. Cash You Outside. No, she's gone. Moldy Locks is the new internet star because she took a punch to her forehead as she entered the fray and entered the skirmish. She had a Facebook page. It's clear. She said she was going to go there. She was going to bring back 100 neo-Nazi scalps. Okay, so let's not fool ourselves that she was some innocent bystander who was just there to take care of her boyfriend. So she's fascinating in that she cleaned up and she gave this interview which completely spun everything in a very different direction, because if you look at the videotape, there's evidence, clear evidence that is contrary to what she's mostly talking about. So then what happens after that is people, okay, here we go. Who is she? Just like they found Eric Clanton, the professor at San Francisco State, my alma mater. Now they're going to find out who she is. Well, apparently her name is Venus Rosales. Here we go. There's no privacy anymore, boys and girls. Even on the side of truth, they're gonna find you out. And she has an escort page. She has an escort page. She's kind of a babe for hire. And her you go into these some of the YouTube videos and they actually show you her actual page. And she's half naked, and she's sex for sale. So here we have sex for sale and a college professor, and they're all part of the Antifa experience. And I'm sure if you dig in on the right, you'll find shit on the right side too. But it's fascinating because what that battle, the Battle of Berkeley, not only exhibited in terms of this left-right schism and finally the right deciding, hey, we're not going to take it anymore, But it also exposed this very interesting and sophisticated and growing kind of underbelly of the private surveillance state, not the public surveillance state. Well, I guess you could call it public. That we, the people, theoretically can keep tabs on each other, and maybe that's exactly what they want us to do. Sure as hell saves a lot of work on their end, but it's still fascinating nonetheless. Is there some kind of moral hypocrisy involved, or is it actually level the playing field? I think that's to be determined. Perhaps in certain cases, it might be on the pedogate, Pizzagate, pedophile gate tip. Clearly it was. And then all of a sudden, the gatekeepers decided to slam that gate shut, although there are still people that are doing massive amounts of research around it and continue to do so to this day, even though Alex Jones has been shut down. I guess David Seaman is doing his thing still, but it's not, there seems to be this kind of litany of arrests are happening. There are some arrests happening. There was a judge recently arrested in Kentucky for child trafficking. That's true. That happened 2 days ago, and the place was called California, Kentucky. So there is some action and some traction, and we'll see where that goes. But I think these people would rather start World War III than have Pizzagate and Pedogate come down around them, and that's my opinion. I'm not sure if I have anything else to share today, although there's something in the back of my mind that is like knocking at my head saying that I do. So maybe I can talk for just a little while longer in order to kind of bring that thought back out into the open. Okay, final thought. Here it is. The strange thing that I experienced as I watched what happened in Berkeley was that there were some interesting, I wouldn't say shifting of alliances, but as I looked around and I saw who Donald Trump has become, and now he wants to go after Julian Assange. He's on everything. There's candidate Trump and President Trump. Now all of a sudden, Trump is looking like the candidate or the person that the left and Antifa and all these people have been talking about. I mean, it's a strange kind of sort of, how do we say this? I wouldn't call it cognitive dissonance, but it's almost like a psychic hernia in some ways. And if you take that into account, and you see these guys and women on the side of the alt-right who are taking on Antifa, now all of a sudden they've become kind of the shock troops for this Mussolini-like figure of Trump. And they now have become the fascists and I wouldn't call them white supremacists, because I can tell you right now, you look at the lineup on the right side, and it is clearly not lily white. There are people of many stripes, races, creeds, colors. They're over there. Okay. But it's an interesting notice, because are you defending this version of Trump, or are they defending the version of Trump that they bought into during the election? And I think there needs to be some kind of clear demarcation. And by the way, if this group, the alt-right or the paleoconservatives, whoever they are going to survive and make an impact, then they need to divorce themselves from Trump. And they need to embrace what are so-called American values or more nationalist values. They need to have an amicable separation with the president. Because I think that's where, if we're going to have any hope, that this group needs to be mobilized in a way that is not attached to some kind of political dogma or creed that they took in during the run-up of the election, which is no longer even in existence. Because if they continue to defend the indefensible, then it's going to be very difficult for people who actually think to buy into it. And then all of a sudden now we're caught in an ideological half Nelson between the seeming disparity of candidate Trump or President Trump and the vociferous and even aggressive at times ability to or move to stand by him and for him versus the other side who is seeing something that needs to be brought up and addressed or talked about. So we got to get real clear on that, or else that can be tricky. So if you are on the alt-right, if you're getting ready to put on a football helmet or a motorcycle helmet like a football helmet like Jack Nicholson in Easy Rider, and go on down to the latest free speech Antifa showdown, throwdown. Remember just listen to what I'm saying. And check where your values are. Now, ultimately, are they American values? Are they human values? Are they universal values? Well, that's for each and every one of us to decide. And I'm always on the side of clarity to the best that I can be, so that we can begin to make decisions or at least see what's happening from a place of, at times, dispassionate truth, so that we don't get our signal played. And that's really what it's all about. It takes work. It takes work. Well, that's it, boys and girls. I think we're done for this part of my work for this day. As always, you can find me at robertphoenix.com. You can find me over on Facebook. You can find me on YouTube. These broadcasts do go directly to YouTube, and it would be great if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And that's it. We'll see you back here 24 hours from today. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame.